All right, let's talk some New England Patriots for a second. They're obviously a very interesting team. I think most teams would feel like, hey, going from 7-9 to a playoff team, like, all right, we're on the right track. Things are going well. But obviously with the Patriots, they have very high expectations for themselves. You know, the thumbnail for this has a ring in it, and for a reason. That's the expectation, to win Super Bowls as long as Bill Belichick is there. So, let's talk about how close they are. And I think they have a very interesting offseason, because I think last year free agency was obviously a big part of how they got to the playoffs in the first place. You could also sit here and say, well, the playoffs didn't go too well. Well, let's just look at where they're at currently and what free agents they have to sign. So here we go. They have $8 million in cap space. So, hey, you're into positives in cap space. That's good. Not every team can say that. A good amount can't, in fact. And the clear thing that you see right here is J.C. Jackson, who the projection, I've actually changed the projections now. I had been using Sports Track. I'm now using PFF because they have it for just more players. So using PFF's suggested for how much millions they should get. So their suggestion for J.C. Jackson would be $18 million, which makes sense. I mean, getting that true number one corner who's very young, yeah, teams are going to shell out some cash for that. And if you let him go, I mean, this is a scheme that depends on corners. You already lost Stephon Gilmore. Do you now lose J.C. Jackson as well? That would be tough to come back from, and especially after, the playoff game, which did not go well. Part of that was just Josh Allen went off, but still, you would like to make sure that you have guys who can cover. Losing J.C. Jackson isn't going to help things. He's probably someone you really want to make sure you keep. You also have Dante Hightower, who, listen, he's someone that you certainly you could get rid of. Their projection for him is $8 million. I wonder how much of that is just kind of on name brand more so than actually the talent that you would get with him, because I didn't think he had his best season last year. Again, very good player, one of the all-time playoff performers, right? I still stand by. He deserved the Super Bowl MVP in Super Bowl 53 when they beat the Rams, the most recent time. To me, I felt like he was amazing in that. He obviously had the strip sack fumble in the Falcons game, but still, is he still that guy? That's the question. There's also Trent Brown, who, again, is great when healthy, but that's a big thing. That's a big if, right? Is if he can stay on the field. He just hasn't been on the field as much. So the talent level is there, and if you can get a healthy Trent Brown for $10 million, that's a steal, but that's a big if. So there's that question mark. And you have some other guys that have kind of, the classic Patriots guys, right? Devin McCourty, of course. You also have Ted Carreras. You have Jawan Bentley and James White. So those are all guys who you would be okay if you got rid of. And kind of the Patriots are just a unique and different team where they kind of don't build their roster the way a lot of other teams build their roster. Typically, they like to have, everyone on a roster who can, perform. They like to have a lot of different guys who can do different things, whereas a lot of teams just say, give me the best 22. That's not the Patriots style, so that's kind of what makes them interesting. So if they wanted to re-sign everybody on this list, they would need $54 million, meaning they'd have to clear $46 million to get under the cap if they wanted to do it without restructures and kicking the can down the road, which every team, all but two teams last year spent over the salary cap in terms of actual cash. So they'll certainly spend over the cap to some degree, but the question is, of course, how much. The most last year was about $60 million over the cap. So they could just keep all these guys and stick with it if they wanted to, but, let's keep going. These are the players that they could cut if they wanted to. You have Jonathan Jones, you have Kyle Van Noy, and then you have punter Jake Bailey. Basically, anytime a punter is scheduled to make more than $1 million, I'm going to put them on the list of that's an option that you could do just to save some money. Again, do you want to make these moves? That's totally up for debate, and you can make your decision on, do you think that they should get rid of these guys? And again, it's not like they would be tanked if they lost any of these guys. That's why I put them on the list, because these are ways you can gain some money if you have to, but we'll see what they end up doing. Like, for example, someone like Jonathan Jones, hey, if you do cut him, you save $6 million, but if you're already losing J.C. Jackson, do you want to lose another corner is the whole question there. So that's the intrigue on that. Finally, let's look at this. So this was their final PFF grades for the entire season. This is where they ranked in each positional category. So for passing, 10th best, and that's good, right? I mean, for a rookie quarterback, Mac Jones came in and played well, was the 10th best quarterback in football according to PFF, and that's just in terms of overall passing. So, for example, if a team had different quarterback splits time, then it's all factored together. The offensive line was very good, the receiving game was very good, and the running game was very good. So you can maybe still find improvements in the passing game. I think, you could really use a number one receiver. I think that that's fair to say. You could use just someone who's the guy, but they have options. It's not like they need a lot of bodies there. They kind of just could use maybe a number one, a true number one. As for the defense, it was pretty good as well. I mean, pass rush is clearly an issue. That's something they could look to improve upon. That might be, a true number one receiver, and pass rush might be the main areas they try to improve upon. But they covered well and they stopped the run well. So for the Patriots, I really do think it's more about maintaining than it is about adding. Obviously, people made a big deal about Bill Belichick and the Patriots and kind of the way that they built their roster last year and all the money that they spent. And it is interesting what they decided to do, right? I mean, it's certainly fascinating because this isn't exactly what we've seen the Patriots do in the past, but it's also not what we've seen the Patriots do in the past. I mean, they have always used free agency as a key tool to get players. They just usually use it to get depth players. They've spent a lot in free agency in terms of getting these smaller guys that maybe people haven't really looked at and, filling out the roster that way and turning them into players that no one else thought would really be anything or would be much of anything, and they've improved. So that's what New England has historically done, and for this year, where they don't have as much cap space as they had last year, that might be what they do again, is let's just try to build in ways that, maybe get someone who can play opposite Matthew Judon and do a better job rushing the passer. Something like that might be a real benefit that they could have, but I really do think it's more about maintaining. If the Patriots have the exact same roster next year as they had last year, they're in a pretty good spot. I don't think that that's a big issue for them. I think that they're probably all right in that spot. They're not a bad football team by any means. So I know that people are going to kind of probably make a big deal out of losing to the Bills the way you did. And listen, that's a very real thing because you played the Bills 3 times, and in 2 of those games, clearly Josh Allen was the reason that you lost, because you have this just superstar quarterback in your division that you have to work around and you have to find ways to beat. The one way they beat them was with a weird weather game, which maybe that's just it, is saying, hey, we play in New England, the weather is going to get weird, let's pay attention to that. But through free agency, it's probably going to be these lower key signings for New England, I think. And the real thing is okay, if you have to tag J.C. Jackson, then tag J.C. Jackson. Do not let that guy out the door. I think it would be an absurd decision for J.C. Jackson to go there. I think that would be insane. If you have to lose guys like Hightower and Brown, to me, those are ones you can kind of live with more. I think that's okay, you can build through the draft, get younger there in those positions. I can understand that. And to some degree, they might have to get younger in certain areas. If you lose a Jawan Bentley, that's not the worst thing in the world. But the J.C. Jackson is the guy you have to find a way to keep. And my guess is they will. But should be interesting. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts on the New England Patriots this free agency period? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.